Driveline R&D podcast, episode 83.
Pretty good.
Unfortunately, without Caravan this week. My name's Kyle Lindley, drinking a Bud Light Lime, as are we all.
Yes, I'm Anthony Brady, Director of Sports Science, Driveline Baseball, primary host of the Driveline R&D Research and Drinks podcast. Episode 83 today. Yeah, Bud Light Limes all around. No Caravan. He is out of town this week. Should be back next week. So we got one episode this week without Caravan. But we are joined today by two guests, high performance trainer Brice Crider and throwing trainer Juan Rodriguez. I think I nailed that, right?
There we go.
Yep. All the information accurate. Okay, let's go. Yeah, we got two guests today. One of the things we were talking about was recently, like on a couple of the pods we've had hitting trainers, pitching trainers. We've had some people from HP. We had Whitey on, but we thought it'd be good to get someone from both sides, someone from HP, and then also someone from the skill side, talking about kind of like the balance of that. So we'll get into that a bit later. But first, let's just start with intros. So whoever wants to go first, get it started.
Yeah, I'm Brice Crider. I'm a high performance trainer here at Driveline Baseball. I've been here for like 2-ish years now.
Fuck yeah, dude. Time flies.
There we go. I know. It feels like it just started. Dude. It's crazy. But originally...
2 years working here.
2 years working here.
How long have you been training?
What'd you say?
How long have you been training?
Here? Just about 2 years. So I started here as a trainee in July.
2020, right?
July 2020. Was just like always trying to show value. Like, cause it was always my dream to work here when I was in high school. I was like, oh, this would be a dope place to work once I graduate from college. And then Dana was like, you want a job? And I was like, yeah. Absolutely.
Fuck yeah.
And
yeah, you were one of the first assessments in the temporary setup over there, right? Because we opened up this facility after the shutdown in like the first week of July.
Yeah, like I think I was like one of the first people in the new facility.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Yeah, pretty sick. So came here as a trainee, got my start as a trainer here as an intern, to kind of just like work my way up from there. Still playing. I head out to college in August, so that'll be sick. Ready to kind of get out of here. And
where to?
UNC Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, okay. Fuck yeah.
So excited to get back on the field. But yeah, originally got my start as a strength intern at Seattle U. Like when I was in JUCO, I was playing in junior college up in Skagit Valley. I would drive down and like volunteer intern there every night or like a lot of nights a week. So shout out to Cameron Williams for giving me that opportunity because I definitely didn't deserve it. But yeah, so that's
was that with the baseball team?
That was with the basketball team because their lists were the only ones late enough that I could make it. So I would like get out of practice at like 6 p.m., drive like 2 hours down to Seattle, be there for like 45 minutes for the basketball lift, and like drive 2 hours back.
Oh my!
Yeah, it was
nice.
ass. But I mean, got me this job, so
yeah, it
worked out.
Nice,
solid.
Juan Rodriguez, throwing trainer here at Driveline. Been here for 2 years now. Yeah, a little over 2 years. So I started March of 2020. Before that, I was working at the typical baseball facility in Florida, not doing anything special, just like doing lessons. I was doing hitting lessons actually.
Let's go.
So I didn't know that.
So yeah, doing some pitching on the side. Before that, I worked in Pro Bowl for a year with the Rays in 2017. That's where I met Daniel Coyne. We stayed in touch throughout the years when he came here and all that stuff. Was looking to get back into baseball after not getting a job when I was with the Rays, or like not being in the industry pretty much of professional baseball. After that opportunity with the Rays, so like never really got anything. Dan hit me up on like Christmas of like 2019, I think it was, like, yo, we're hiring for like a throwing trainer, so you should apply. And I'm like, there's no shot. Like absolutely no shot I'm getting hired. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll apply. And then I was like, I didn't apply because I didn't think I was gonna get hired. And then like Dan Coleman was like, yo, did you apply? And I'm like, to be honest, bro, like I haven't. And he's like, why not? And I'm like, I just don't think I'm gonna get hired. So like, I'm not gonna waste your time, waste my time. He's like, bro, just like submit the application, see what happens. So ended up applying. Didn't hear back for a while.
Yeah.
Actually,
as it usually goes.
Right. Actually ended up, I don't know if a lot of people know this, or if many people know this at Driveline, but like I actually took an offer, like took a job with an org. Because like I just like,
you didn't hear anything?
Yeah, like I didn't want to like stay another year out of baseball. And then like as soon as I texted O'Coin's like, yo, like took X position with like X team, he was like, damn, bro, like, we're just going to call you to like offer you a position, you know? So I'm like, man, like, it's too late. I'm not, I already given my word that I was going to stay with them or like take that position. So like, I'm not sorry, like, thank you, but like, I'll try again, like July, whenever you guys are hiring.
Yeah.
Went to work that day, couldn't sleep because I knew like coming to Driveline was going to be the best opportunity for me to like, just do something in baseball. And I'm like, all right, I just like thought about it until like 3 a.m, got up at 7, texted our coins like, yo, give me like an hour, I'll call the team and just like let them know that I'm not going to take it.
Let's go.
That took like 4 hours because I didn't want to make the call. But yeah, I just went home. I went to work and like before I, started my shift, I was like, call the team. I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna. I know I just said I was gonna take it, but actually, JK, got offered this, and he wasn't pleased. But like, it is what it. Coming to Driveline was gonna be the best opportunity for me to like, again, just further my career. So I ended up taking that job.
What was you guys' like first intro to Driveline in terms of like just hearing about it or hearing of it?
I would say when I got really interested would be like Casey Weathers, How Good Am I? Like something I'm like,
oh really?
Yeah, I think that was like
iconic video.
I would have been like 17 then?
Yeah. 6,
because I was 17. I watched that video like every night before I went to bed. And then I would like reach out to Bodie because he said they were doing like free assessments for like high schoolers in the area. And there was some like stipulation to that. And I was always like emailing him like, hey, like, how do I get into train for free? Because I couldn't afford to like come train at that point. So I was like, okay, I was always emailing him and like asking him questions. And then that's where I got really into like the Driveline blogs and just like stuff like that. It was like Driveline and Elite FTS, mostly like those two websites, like with all the free stuff. Like that's kind of where I got my start. And then I like started ordering like Bonder Chuck and all that shit with all my like gas money that I was supposed to be spending. But
for me, it was actually a coin. So when we were with the Rays, we were both at the complex, and I came from like a pretty typical baseball background, being from the Dominican Republic, I was born and grew up there. So like, not a lot of like data driven stuff, just like, if you're good or you're good, you sign and like that's how it is. But it's like, it's getting better now, but like, it's not like, like if you like get stronger, like that's a good idea, especially, like mid 2000s. So when I went to work for the Rays, O'Coin, which is like every time he like I asked something or like he brought up an idea, it's like, yeah, that's actually like not true, like this is how like things are, like this study says X, Y, and Z, and I'm like, how the fuck do you like how the fuck do you know this shit,
because he's got so many tabs open all the time,
right? All the time, and he's like,
never closes anything.
Like I can't remember exactly what he was talking about, but like he mentioned Driveline. I'm like, what is that? He's like, oh, it's a like training facility. They do a lot of cool shit. Like you should look them up. Yeah. So I went to the website, went to the blogs, started reading some of the blogs, and then started reading some of the studies. Because I think at that point we had like studies that actually were cited within certain blogs. So I started reading those, and that's how kind of like I
just got intro to that,
I got interested in Driveline and like the training methodology and all that stuff.
Yeah. So, when you were doing hitting stuff before you came on, did you?
Yeah, but it wasn't anything like it was a typical like teaching a freaking 8-year-old how to swim.
Like one-on-one lessons.
Like, it's like one-on-one lessons, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean the only reason why I took that job is because like I went on the website of the place that I was working at or that I eventually worked for, and like they have a hit tracks, and I'm like, holy shit.
Oh wow.
Hit tracks, like I'll take a job there and just like do whatever. So like that's why I ended up going there, and then the guy's like, yeah man, like actually I'm losing one of my trainers, if you want to work here, and then like we don't have a pitching guy, but if you want to start like doing something, like you can. So I just started like doing pitching lessons, and like towards the end I started like trying to implement some of the like bios and stuff like that. Of course I didn't know what I was doing, but it was kind of like I was trying to like do something. Same thing with like on the hitting side, like I just bought a single blast, and would use it with like 3 or 4 different guys, and just like had a spreadsheet that I would try to keep like metrics and shit like that, even though I didn't mean that it was, what it meant necessarily. It was like, oh, bat speed. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, like manually tracking it.
Session, date, and like just keep track of them. But at least I think it showed like some sort of like, initiative to like
right.
try to like develop something.
I mean,
like,
dude, that's what Lindley and I were doing in 2017 when we were interns here. All the baseline bullpens back then in that summer would just be Lindley and I sitting next to them, typing in the values that showed up on Rapsodo and on Pulse. Well, at the time, Modus. Right. But we just put those in a spreadsheet. We didn't do anything with them. We were just we saw the spin rate. And we were like, okay, here's velocity, here's spin rate, here's stress, arm slot. We just took a log of all of it, you know? So it was starting somewhere.
Didn't know what spin efficiency was.
Yeah.
It was didn't even record it all the time or whatever.
Yeah. That was back too in the days when I was pulling, we both were. We were doing a little bit of double time on the floor sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Well, especially during assessments because we didn't have a ton of trainers.
Like trainers?
Yeah.
I wasn't training a ton, but I was just helping with assessments, teaching guys the drills and taking videos and shit.
I was the go-to. I think I was the last kind of option if scheduling or something happened. I think it was Rogers. Rogers was in charge of it at the time, but if something happened or whatever, or someone needed an off day, he would hit me up and be like, "Hey, need you working the floor for a couple hours." So that was my R&D internship experience. It was before I threw sidearm, so at least I could give some some overhand some advice there.
I thought you always were a sidearm.
No, dude, that was actually 2018 summer. Or wait, no, 2017 summer? I think it was that summer. That summer I tore my labrum. So I was still over the top at the time. That summer I tore my labrum and I was deciding whether or not to go back to school, my second year of grad school, last year that I thought at the time for eligibility to play. And I was honestly considering staying on at Driveline full time and just not finishing out my master's degree. Right. And then a couple weeks were left in the season. And I remember one day in the lab, I bet I can find the video too. There's one day in the lab where no one was there. I was really bored working on stuff. And I was also so frustrated that I just fucking tore my labrum after, 2 Tommy Johns and all that. And I hadn't done anything for a couple weeks. Dude, and I just started grabbing plyo balls and just throwing them from different arm slots until I found something that wasn't painful. And then I took it to the mound and I just started throwing baseballs off the mound. And I think I hit 82 or 83 at some point, and I tried to throw a changeup or a slider or whatever. I'm literally in gym shorts and Vans, just throwing in an empty 4-3, right. Trying to find something that is serviceable and not painful. And I was I think I might have something here. And then 2 days later, we had a studs game that I went to, and because I sent the video to Mitch and Cody Aiden, who's coaching the studs, and I was I think I might have something here. I'm down to try. And I threw a bullpen to Mitch before the game, just without jersey on or anything. And I was 87 to 88 from the side, pain free. And so I was fuck it, we're gonna do it. There was 1 week left in the season. I got 1 inning in with some reps from down there, and then I threw live at Driveline, and then we went to Wichita. And this is my first time ever pitching in Wichita. First game I come into is 8th or 9th inning.
Bases loaded.
No, it was no one on, thank God. But I literally, first pitch I threw, I hit the guy square in the back. Just first fastball, just right between the shoulder blades. He gets on base. Next guy, because it's a close game, and it had to be the 8th or the 9th inning. Next guy squares around a bunt. And I threw a strike, but he bunted it. And I was just oh my God, I just threw a fucking strike in a game from new arm angle. My labrum's currently torn, and I'm pretty sure I just fucking yeeted the ball 20 feet in front of me and just bounced it to first for an error, so first and second now, no out still. I've thrown 2 pitches. I'm clearly pretty amped and yipped up, and then I got pulled out of the game. So that was my experience. Both those runs I'm pretty sure scored, and we ended up getting knocked out of Wichita really, really fast. So it was super, super unfortunate. I mean, there was a whole year of time where my ERA in Wichita was just infinity because I'd just given up runs, hadn't recorded an out yet. But yeah, dude, that's how I turned into a sidearmer. It was not at all by I've always been that way. Wild. Yeah, I used to be over the top way back in the day, but when the labor was good. But honestly, when you guys were talking about intros to Driveline, I was looking at this the other day. My like 6-year anniversary of reaching out for the Max Velo program or whatever it used to be called was, I think, last week. So it was like May 2016. And at the time, kind of similar to you, my first intro into a lot of it was Cressy's stuff.
Yeah.
So I was going ham on that. And my plan for that summer was I applied for the Cressy internship, and it was like, that's my first plan. It's like, I'm going to get that, go train with him, then go to school. If I don't get that, like Driveline was my backup.
Right.
And so I ended up not getting the Cressy internship. And then that's how I like came to Driveline. But at the time I was doing an internship with UPS's baseball team, just like doing some strength and conditioning stuff there. I was really interested in like CSCS, the strength and conditioning side. And I just kept thinking in my head that like there had to be a better way for understanding like balancing out lifting and throwing simultaneously.
Right.
Because I was coming back from my second TJ, and I was what I found a ton of success in was Jager's like post throwing protocol long toss program, where you're doing like the 300-foot long toss, like getting used to that. Right. And so I'd like be blowing out my throwing economy doing that. And then at the same time, I was also like reading a bunch of Cressy's stuff and like starting to get really involved in the weight room. So I was just like gassing myself out in the weight room. And then I would go out to the field and just rip like 300-foot long toss all day.
Right.
And then we'd go into games. Yeah, we'd go into games on the weekend, and I would just feel like dog shit and just walk the house and everything.
Why is this not working for you?
Yeah. That was kind of like the first time where I realized like you need a clear delineation or like understanding between the two and how they kind of interact, which is the best way I could formulate a segue into the conversation of some of those things you have to kind of consider and factor in for HP and skill side.
Yeah, to go with that, like that's actually a pretty good point that you bring up, because like somebody, we as people know, we train a bunch of big leaguers. Recently we had one in gym, right? And one of the main questions that was asked was like, what do you guys do differently than like, besides like all the tech and all that stuff, like why do you guys normally find success, so often basically with like, training athletes? One of my, that was kind of like my answer is like, honestly, I think we do a pretty good job of like, of course, like the tech, the PD, the throwing program, the HP side, but like making sure that we are kind of like balancing both. It's what we do a really good job of here, in gyms, like making sure that like when we are pushing on one side, you're not pushing on the other end, or on the other side. So that way, like when it's time to push, you actually have something to like give, and you're not like burning the candle at both ends, like like some people might say. But like that's actually a really good point that you bring up, because I think we really do it, actually like a really really good job doing that in gym, just like making sure the guys are like. And Brice can talk a little more on the HP side of things, but like making sure the guys are like, one, working on what their biggest ROI is going to be, right? Like, so like if you're like really weak, making sure like, hey, there's no reason for you to like work on velo right now, because like in comparison to your peers, you're like significantly, just like weaker. Yeah. So like spending 6 weeks just like hammering out the weight room side of things, it's going to be your best friend, and then we can like push it on the throwing side of things. But yeah, really good point, actually.
Yeah, I think that's what really makes the environment special, is like it's a true high performance model where, especially just being able to walk 30 feet and talk to Juan or Man or somebody, and just like having a really good understanding of the throwing side, like that allows me and the rest of the HP department to do a really good job like pairing stressors, which is like what I view our job as. Like I view our job as being like 30,000 feet up, looking down, like, okay, they're a little bit more granular, getting a little bit more into the skill side of like how they're delivering the stressors. We're way up here, like, okay, can the athlete handle these stressors? What sliders do I have to play with to like grant them the ability to adapt to those?
Yeah, like a bunch of knobs.
Yeah, exactly. So just like, that's what makes it really special. And just the fact that all the floors agree on the big things, which you kind of take for granted as a high performance trainer or strength conditioning coach, that like, like a sport coach understands stressors and like understands like physiological stressors and stuff like that. Like that's really rare.
Or even just philosophies, just like
generally,
alignment
like
on
the fact that I can talk to a pitching coach or a throwing trainer and he understands like a high-low method or like training concurrently or stuff like that. Like that's, you definitely take that for granted when you work here. Because like when you go work in normal sport, like there's a lot of, there's not as much like synergy between departments or like different coaches.
Yeah, like you pretty much have no say, right? Like, so like if you're working for like a school or maybe a pro or for like how much input you have on like what a guy's doing or like what his best thing to focus on is going to be over the next 6 weeks. Like as an, strength and conditioning guy, you might not have that option, right? Versus here is like, that's a good thing about training at Driveline here is like when you come in and we meet, after your assessment or your mocap, right? So day 1, you do your mocap. Day 2, you do your HB assessment. Day 3 is when we typically have that meeting for in-gym athletes.
Yeah.
In that meeting, we're going to go over like, okay, what are your quote unquote deficiencies, right? On the throwing side, on the, physical quality side of things, and what's going to give you your biggest bang for your buck.
Yeah.
And based on that, right, like there's no discussions like, all right, I know so-and-so is like really, really weak. He's 20 years old. He weighs 175 pounds. He just like needs to get stronger, like put on some weight,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
Then, like on my side, it's just like, all right, man, like it's really like, and I think that's important too, is like from the throwing trainer's perspective, it's also like, I know you came here to like, I know you want to do pull downs and like plyo velo and like mount velo, but like right now, man, like you just saw it. I was in there with you. It's like you weigh 175 pounds. You're a sophomore in college, right? Like you're 6'2". Like we can do some things on the throwing side of things. But like right now, there's no need to like push it. By you just getting stronger, like getting some weight, you probably
gonna
get
calories.
some yeah, exactly.
Cliff.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna ask. What are the athletes usually respond like to that kind of conversation where maybe they came in wanting to do one thing, the coaches kind of say they should probably work on this other thing? Because I haven't really experienced an athlete meeting since like when did we start doing them together in 2019?
Yeah.
Or like when this facility opened up. But every athlete gets a meeting with the strength trainer and the skills trainer. And I think that's super cool. But I figured there's probably, is there any pushback at all, or
Not
are they
usually.
typically like pretty
And like
appreciative?
especially, I mean, me and Juan might have done 200
Yeah,
meetings
I
together. Like,
Shooting for like 400 by the end of the summer,
yeah,
right?
we'll spend a
Let's
good amount
go.
of time together this summer. But like especially just having both trainers there and like both of us really emphasizing that the goal is for them to get really good at baseball. Like I feel like that's especially significantly where the difference between calling myself like a strength trainer or a high performance trainer really lies. It's like I don't like being called a strength trainer because what I do isn't strength. Like what I do is I want to make you a high performer on the field. And like there's a lot that goes into that when it comes to general physical qualities, but like really emphasizing to not only the other floors but the athlete, like that's where my goal lies. Like I haven't forgotten what's important, and that's on-field performance. So like when it comes to those meetings, like the way you phrase it to the athlete, like especially if it's a guy that he wants to come in and do pitch designs or whatever, you know what I mean? It's like, hey, I have objective data that I can show you where I can predict a certain amount of velocity. Like we have our predicted velocity calculator. Like, hey, if you make this much gains on strength and power and reactive strength or body weight, here's what I would predict you to throw how much harder on this side. And like really phrasing it as like, hey, getting better at the skill is really difficult. Like that's why I think these guys are so good at their job, is like it's an art at getting an athlete better at their skill.
For sure.
Like I can almost guarantee you if you're really low on general physical qualities, I can get you better. So that's really good. Like I always phrase that as a really positive thing. Like, hey, you may have come in and wanted to do pitch designs, but like I have even better news. I can make you really good. Like if you just like buy into the training plan and like train your ass off.
Yeah, and raise their ceiling a ton, right?
A ton.
And it's also like, sorry to interrupt, but like it's also like you throw 81.
Right.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
your PD is gonna be throwing 84. You're like hitting 84. You know.
Right.
That's
But to answer your questions, like a lot of times, like we don't have any sort of pushback. Like I don't think I've ever had any pushback during athlete meetings, mainly because like the data is there. Like they can see
sure.
where they stack up.
Yeah.
You know, versus their peers. So like, you know, it's pretty easy for when Brice or like anyone on the HB side of things, like this is you. This is everybody else that we've had in your, age group or like velocity group. It's pretty evident for the athlete that like, okay, like I just need to get better at like X, Y, and Z.
For sure. Right. And I think the cool thing there too, it's obviously not this simple, but somebody wants to like get better stuff. They want their stuff plus or the whatever measure of their like arsenal is to get better. And then it's like, okay, well, you could just focus on strength conditioning or high performance. You can work on gaining some weight. We expect your velocity and your just physicality to get better. If your velocity goes up, your stuff's just going to be better as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's like
you don't need to spend 4 weeks, trying to sweep a slider.
Yeah.
Right? If you go from like 83 to 86, your shit's better.
Yeah. That's probably on my like Driveline or my Mount Rushmore of like Driveline-isms is I don't think it was Ian Walsh originally. It was probably someone else, but I just always remember Ian Walsh joking about going into athlete meetings when we were on tour with like some of the younger guys being like, all right, so today for pitch design, we're going to be doing bench press. That's what we're going to start with. But like for a lot of them, I mean, that overall is true. Like the 100%. Best pitch design for that person is probably just going to be like in the weight room or, of some kind, right? Like pulling off the lifts and getting used to that. But I mean, yeah, that was by far the that was my favorite. Honestly, thinking about the athlete meetings too, I think when we were on tour, that reminded me a lot of we would do all of the data collections on the athletes and then we would kind of like break off. Like we would write up all the biomechanics notes, the HP staff that was with us there, they would do all of like the lifting and strength notes. And then, Jags or whoever it was from the skill floor, they would do like the throwing related notes and the pitch design related notes. And then we did a couple of those and we started to realize like, there was a slight bit of like disjointedness to it, right? We were kind of just like feeding them with a ton of information. The athletes would go through 4 separate 30-minute meetings with all of us, right? So it'd be like 30 minutes on biomechanics, 30 minutes on pitch design, 30 minutes on throwing and programming, 30 minutes on lifting. And I think like, again, it was early on, but we started to realize that like integrating that or pulling it all together into kind of like the system that we have now just makes so much more sense, right?
100%.
Like, take the plan, because if not, you're just, even in one meeting alone, you're already giving the athlete so much information that it can just be like overwhelming, if it's too specific in certain areas. So
100%.
I agree. And like, I think that's what the best trainers that I've seen here do. Like I remember sitting with Spencer Medic in my first athlete meeting and him like breaking it down so simply, even though there's all this information. Like the best guys, and like I think all of us do a really good job of it, in my opinion, like make it really simple. Like, hey, there's a lot of complex stuff here, but like the best guys make it simple. So like college athletes understand like, hey, here's what it is and here's how you implement it. And I think the fact that we're always on the same page in the meetings, and like he'll like chime in when I'm doing my strength side of the meeting, and I'll like chime in when he's like, I'll display a horizontal abduction to an athlete to kind of show like, hey, like we're all working towards the same goal. It's not like one or the other.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I thought about when it might have been like later in college when I was like really looking into CSCS stuff and like, do I want to go the strength and conditioning route? Like, how do you get into this performance training kind of field that's starting, right? And like, how do you take in all the interdisciplinary approaches and get the broad background and stuff? But because I just remember thinking that I had really, really good strength coaches like across the board that I'd had like great experiences with, but I always kind of wondered, would I have been better off with a not as good strength coach across the board who had, compared to like an average to below average strength coach that at least has an understanding of like throwing and baseball development,
Right.
And I think that's especially present at colleges where you just have like a handful of strength and conditioning staff. They're dealing with multiple teams, right? So they're trying to coordinate and communicate with multiple coaches across different sports. And so they're just, focusing on, okay, I have this athlete, I'm going to make them strong. Not kind of like what you were saying, I have this athlete, I want to make them better at their sport.
Right.
Right. I mean, I feel like that's a huge, I don't know, like whiff at the college level. It's probably just like structurally in place, but I do feel that you could have like a worse off strength and conditioning coach, but almost like better suited for the movement. And that would be like more advantageous for the athlete.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just like because like even if you have that coach who's like a little bit below, right, like the top tier strength coach, right, but like he's familiar with like throwing, right, like you're just gonna get better at both. Versus if you don't have that, right, like, which I think is the case, like you said, for most colleges and most programs, like they might get really good at one end of the spectrum, not the other, right? So I agree with that. I
think we've done a pretty good job of factoring that into a lot of hiring decisions across the board, not even on like just the skill side, but even in, R&D too. I know that in the last round on the sports science stuff, like really, really prioritized some of the softer skills, like not necessarily looking for the best technical, biomechanist or whatever, because like, if you don't know anything about baseball, it's going to be pretty tough. Like I'm super down for you to bring in, great ideas that I haven't heard of. Like I love that aspect of it, but also, if you're too stuck in an academic and maybe more generalizable approach, it's just not going to work. The softer skills and like the intangible things over there, I think are more important than like, is this person the best, strength and conditioning coach ever? Is this person the best biomechanist ever? Right. Like there's so much more to it that kind of like fits into our integrative model, I guess. Right.
Right.
Yeah. And like, I would echo that and say like, I think all departments here at Driveline do a pretty good job of that. Yeah. Because like when you go to like, when you go on the training floor, like you don't hear a trainer like cite biomech like word for like your elbow flexion is like 85 when you to get it to like 107. It's not, it's simply just like, hey, from here let's go a little closer to the ear, like that, that type of cueing. Same thing on the HP side of things. It's not like, well, technically, like the, like I don't know, like
peak power or whatever.
Like trying to be like so academic in a way that like the athlete just like doesn't know what you're talking about or doesn't get it. It's like at the end of the day, like no one's getting better by us doing that. So like everybody, I think on the training floor and the HP side of things too, it's like really good at just like simplifying things. Just like might not be the smartest dudes on the planet, but like pretty sure we have like some of the best dudes like who are able to like like create or like get complex ideas and just like be able to communicate those in like a really simple manner to like athletes.
And we're all pulling the same direction on the same rope. Which you don't get even at the highest level of the game.
And I think I'd almost like push back on what you said a little bit about like people being the best strength coach or like but not being really good but working with sport. Like in my view, it's like you can't be a really good strength coach unless you understand the demands of the sport.
That's a good point.
Those are one and the same in my book. And like it's not that you have to have been a baseball player, but you better really like, especially a skill as specific, especially tissue specific as throwing, like it's really complex and it's a lot different than working with just like a general field sport athlete. Like you better understand those stressors. And like, I've always been like of the belief that you should be a generalist here, and like Driveline makes it really easy to do that. Like you should be able to read a biomech report if you're a strength coach. You should be able to set up a TrackMan. You should be able to do all of that stuff.
Set up a podcast room.
Exactly. No big deal. Don't want to brag. But like, like I just don't think you can be a really good high performance coach unless you really understand that. And I kind of view it as a field that's kind of in its infancy when it comes to that. Like it used to be very strength conditioning based, but now it's transferring to like, how do I make these athletes the highest performers? And I think that kind of gap between the skill side and the strength side is starting to disappear, which I think is really valuable.
I could see there being an argument for being a gap, but I think it's also like the same transitions happening on the skill side, like in the last few years, a lot of, or like historically coaches in the big leagues and coordinators and all these people who get these high up jobs in pro ball are all ex players, right? And they're there because they were good players at whatever they're coaching. If they're a pitching coach, they were there. They're a lot of times they're there because they were a good pitcher. But just like what you said about strength coaches, like you can't be a good strength coach if you don't know the demands of the sport. That's kind of how it seems like skills guys or people are going as well, right? Like you can't be a good skills coach if you don't know the other demands, the strength demands, and everything. Out, like exactly, and understand not just with strength, but with all the other aspects of pitching, command and velocity and stuff and all this stuff. So
Yeah.
I think the point about being a generalist is pretty universal, I think, across all disciplines in baseball, it seems right now.
Yeah. 100%. That's a good way to put it. I was thinking of it as like, I mean, I have my fair share of gripes with the CSCS structure and everything there, but I get like that's how I was thinking of it when I was describing best strength and conditioning coach in the world is the person who like, you know, nails 100% of every question on CSCS.
What I keep with the mirrors,
right? It's like, okay, you know, honestly, yeah, I'm sure you have it. So even just thinking at that level, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, caring way less about the credentials and letters after, even though, I mean, I've got some letters after my name on Twitter. So
Yeah, I've seen
I
those.
guess I should fucking, you know,
not me.
I should actually be about it and take those out of there. So, but yeah. I guess what are some of the main things that go into those considerations you guys are talking about? Because summer training is coming up. Obviously, the kind of archetype of athletes that comes in takes a shift from the off season for sure.
Right.
But I think there are some like common themes in there. So I guess like, yeah, what are a few of the considerations when athletes do start showing up this summer, which if there are any listening, there are still slots open. So please
Come train here.
There we go.
Yes. Come train here. But yeah, what are some things that determine like I show up, I'm going to be here for 3 months. You know, am I going to be more focused on skill side or strength side? What kind of like balances out and goes into those decisions?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're right. It is way different than the off season. Like not only like in the off season, you're usually dealing with pro guys who are more trained, more developed, and just like biologically older. But also like those pro guys are facing higher stresses on the skill side. They usually throw harder, they swing the bat faster. So you really have to accommodate for those really high stressors on that side a lot more in my job. But like a lot of college guys that come in, it's just like, hey, like you've got to get stronger and you've got to get heavier. Like you need more muscle mass.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty much the basics. And there are some guys that like come in that are really well developed. I think almost we were a little bit skewed because we kind of attract like the really well trained guys just because like people that train well want to train here.
Yeah.
So like we are a little bit more like the average college guy isn't what you think it is when you're here. Like the average college guy is much less trained than the average person that comes in here.
Yeah.
So you have to account for that. But like most of them like, hey, we've got a baseline at the beginning of the summer. Usually you're undersized and you're not strong enough. And because you're not strong enough, you're not powerful enough because you don't have enough horsepower to produce that horsepower fast. So we start off with most guys like, hey, we're going to like hammer the weight room and like put you into on-ramp on the throwing side, like build up some throwing volume after the season, like kind of set the base for like this summer block that we're in. If you're here for, 12 weeks, we'll probably have like 2 blocks. And then like after that first like accumulation type block where our training economy is a little bit higher on the strength side or the high performance side, then maybe we transfer you into like a velo phase or some type of higher stress on the throwing side phase. And at that point, our volume on the strength side goes down significantly. Okay. So then maybe we'll be chasing like absolute strength a little bit more. And I've said this a million times, but I always view all of our programs on the general physical quality side as like a series of light switches. And Spencer Medic was the one that taught me this analogy, but like you go to your grandma's house, she's got like the dimmer switches, like so it's just like you got like volume, absolute strength, power, speed, reactive strength, whatever. Like I'm just playing with those dials. So now a guy's getting more stress on the skill side. All right, I've got to take the volume down to accommodate for that. Yeah. Maybe we're going to drive a little bit more like maximal strength, like absolute strength stuff here. Okay, we did that. Now we want to drive power a little bit. So I'm just like changing those dials. But for the majority of guys, like you've got to get more muscle mass and you've got to get stronger. And then for the guys that are really adapted, then it gets a little bit more complicated with the throwing side. Like that's where like having the best throwing trainers, in my opinion, in the world, like really comes into play. Like for a guy like myself who's still training, like, yeah, I've trained for a long time to like really build up the general physical quality side, but it's difficult to get better at the skills. So that's like now it's like all of my focus is like I've got to get better at throwing. So
and you're more or less maintaining on the high performance side, or
I wouldn't say I'm maintaining because I'm in a rehab, so I've really been able to like push because I have so much training economy. But as I get closer, it's just like I'll take more and more volume away.
Gotcha.
More and more of that like focus. It's just like there's not much return on interest or return on investment for me getting better at the general physical quality side. I'm already like well
enough.
above the
Yeah.
average. So like in terms of like strength, power, like my ability to handle like a large amount of volume. So like now it's like, okay, time to transfer those values to where it matters.
That makes sense. Is that a problem on the, not a problem, but is that a consideration that you guys have to like kind of hound on the pitchers on like the skill side? If a lot of guys are coming in and they're doing their on ramp or accumulation phase early on, and they kind of have to not hold back, but like not blow it out also on the pitching side, is that like an obstacle for you guys to keep them from blowing it out all the time?
Not really, because you try to build, at least on our end, right? Like we try to build the on ramp to a point that like it kind of like fits with their training experience, and like so you do give them some type of high intensity, like from the, let's say the training phase is 6 weeks, so like by the end of week 3, normally maybe the beginning of week 4, week 4, I like to give my guys some type of like higher intensity throwing, right? So like maybe that's when we start doing like hybrid days and stuff like that. And because most guys who like come in, I would say during the summer, haven't done any sort of training like online with us, so like they're pretty new with like to like plyos, weighted balls, and especially like the volume of throwing we do here at Driveline. So like most guys simply just like don't throw as much as we do. So like even an on-ramp phase in which they don't do any sort of velo, it's going to be somewhat challenging for them, especially during the first 3 weeks where they're, you know, getting used to the volume. Now they're really training hard on like both sides, right? Like HB and on the throwing side of things. So like it's not something that I usually come across on the throwing side of things, where guys are like just like don't want to do this on ramp. He's like, I just want to throw hard. Like every once in a while you get a guy who's like, of course, who's like, I feel good, so I'm just like gonna do a hybrid A from the beginning. You're like, no, that's not smart.
Yeah.
Here's why. And like that's
like
where
an
like
idiot.
polls can, like that's where like polls comes into play. It's like, hey, we're in this for a reason. Like, let's make sure that like your recovery days are actually recovery days. You know, like, let's make sure your hybrid Bs are not the same as your hybrid A's, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I see the signs posted on the wall. Recovery is 50%, man.
yeah. So yeah, to answer your question, not really. That's not something we come across.
Gotcha. That's my
very
experience
often.
too, for what it's worth. Doing the first time through the warm up, I was like, was that my throwing workout,
Yeah.
dude? Between the shoulder tube and the wrist weights and everything. I was like, God damn.
I've been there too.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, as far as like lining up, like training, how do we determine like what a guy's going to be doing? I'd say on the throwing side of things, it depends on like one, how much do you throw during the season? Did you pitch at all? How many innings? How do you feel when you come in, right? What type of training history do you have? And again, like what's your lowest hanging fruit? Right? Those are like the three main things. So like we had a guy last year who like came here for velo. I think he was here for like 6 weeks maybe. But in the meeting, he's like, yeah, like towards the end of the season, I had to, like shut it down. And like, I still don't feel like 100%. So like in my head, it's like, all right, man, like, and he told me he was playing summer ball too, So it's like, all right, we're just going to like take it really easy. Just make sure that you feel good. We're still going to train, but I want to make sure that like by the time you leave Driveline, you feel like you can go out and play, I don't know, 5 weeks of summer ball and like be able to like not only compete and like do well during the season or like feel like be in shape to like handle those 5 weeks, but also when you go to school, you have fall ball, right? So you have to be ready for that. So yeah, sure, this guy came in to do velo, right? But like he wasn't ready for it. And he was like okay physically, like on the HP side of things, but like he just wasn't in a place where he could like actually like send it on the throwing side of things. On the other hand, you have guys who like Tommy Mayer's a good example, right? Like who like
legend.
gained at an absurd amount of velo, right? Like that Tommy mocap at like 88, and we did velo for 6 weeks, and then he mocap at like 94 or something.
Oh my
touch
God.
94, average like 93,
Yeah.
something like that. But like Tommy came in as like his mocap's fairly clean, like really good. On the HP side of things, he was like really good too. He had a decent enough like he had been throwing basically enough coming out of the college season, and like he felt good. So like on my end, it's like, on the HP side of things, like, hey man, you're in a pretty good spot. On my side of things, when I look at the biomech reports, like, you move pretty well. There's enough measured deficiencies that we need to address. So it's like, we send it, bro, like, but you do it smart, in a smart way. But like, we can have that guy go into a velo phase pretty much from the get-go. But of course, you got to do it in a smart way. And like, that's like, this guy, just because he hasn't done Driveline before, hasn't trained with Driveline before, doesn't have to just like automatically go through an on-ramp.
So in that case, he's like, his mechanics are good, he's strong enough and powerful enough, so it's like,
he's been
why
thrown
not
in
just
up,
like,
right? So it's like, all right, like,
so like,
I know you're new to this, but like, we're gonna put you in a velo phase because that's what you came here to do. That's one, your lowest hanging fruit, and then like, but we're gonna do it in a smart way, right? Like, it's not like you're just gonna do 2 velo days a week from the get-go, because that's just not smart. But yeah,
how much does duration or length of stay factor in, right? Because I feel like I've seen in some channels, like, misconceptions and questions there from athletes. I think it's understandable too, of like, hey, I'm only going to be out there for a week, or like, hey, I'm only going to be out there for a month, or I'm planning on being out there for a long time. Like the program and what they're given changes a lot based on duration, right?
100%.
Right?
Significantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say it's like, besides the assessment and just like the general demands of the throwing side, it's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah.
Like, especially like when they need to be playing again. It's just like, those usually the shorter their stay, the quicker they're going to be like in competition again. And for me, it's just like looking at the YTP or yearly training plan, I'm starting at like the date I need to have them ready by, and I'm working backwards from there. So if the guy's only there for a month, it's like, well, we probably can't take a ton of throwing volume off, so I probably can't give you a ton of weight room volume. Like, I'll probably put you into like a pretty concurrent like strength phase. So yeah, I'd say that's a huge differentiator is how long they're there. Because like, the way I structure a pro guy's off season who's going to be here for 6 months of the off season, the way I schedule a summer guy who's going to be here for 3 months is really different.
Right. Yeah. It's the same on the throwing side of things, right? It's, if you're going to be here for a year, right? If you're taking a gap, you're definitely not doing below the first phase. Why? Like, even if you have been throwing, it's like, you're going to be here for a long time. Like, let's just make sure you have a shit ton of volume, like, and like a good throwing fitness. You're at a good level of like throwing fitness before we even, put you in velo, because you're going to be here for so long, right? So like, but if you're going to be here, right, like, let's say you're 25, you throw 87, you come here in like, January, and you want to play individual, right? Like, that guy, like, you don't have as much time, right? So like, the risks that we are going to have to take are going to be a little bit higher, right? We're still going to do that in a smart way, but like, yeah, man, you're 25, you throw 87, like, probably not gonna get you a job. So like, we just gotta send it, and you do it smart. But like, yeah, that's 100%. That 100% plays a factor in like how we develop or like come up with training plans.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a question that we didn't have there on topics, and it could put you guys in the hot seat.
I'm good with that.
I think it could be a fire one. So you've both been here for about 2 years, right?
Yep.
Has there been any like athlete experience or athlete story where, like, looking back, you would have just been like, oh, I would have done this like so much differently now, considering things? And like, have we learned anything from it? Like, kind of changed the way, programming? Again, this is a pretty hot seat question. So,
yeah, I think on my end of things, and I mean, everybody can probably relate, but it's like, you're new to the position, right? Like, and this guy, hey, I'm here for like, because when we first opened this facility, it was like late July. I was still in my internship, so like, somebody came in and they're like, I want to do velo, and I'm like, yeah, but you weigh 165, it's just like, yeah, I can come up with something, versus now it's just like, no, like, if that's not something that you need to work on, or you're not ready to do that, but like, I'm just not going to do that for you. Versus before, maybe I would have been like a little bit more lenient on that side of things. Now it's just like, no, bro, like, that's just dumb. Like, why are we going to do that? Like, let's just say, oh, you're going to be here for 3 months. Cool. Then let's, or 12 weeks. Yeah, like the first 6 weeks, we're just going to do X, Y, and Z. Make sure you're in a good spot to then push it towards the, last 6 weeks.
Yeah.
When I started, like, you just like want to, you want to make sure the athletes have a good experience and everything like that. So like, maybe I would have been a little more lenient on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the reason I ask is because I feel like on the, I mean, we've talked about this a bunch on the podcast, and I talk about it a lot because I think it's good to be like very honest and real about it. But on the biomechanics end specifically, you know, like there have been tons of models and systems that we've had where looking back, you know, I would look at stuff that we've done previously and just been like, that guy didn't know fucking shit.
Yeah,
he was so obviously wrong.
100%.
But I feel like those are also kind of the times when, you know, as cliche as it is, for sure, those have been the athletes and moments where I think we've like learned a ton just about, you know, the biomechanics of pitching and movement and all that, where the athletes that didn't get better, we just learned so much from them. So, and I know it exists on the biomechanics end. I'm sure that there are some things.
Yeah, I would say like
side.
same thing. Even like, so like going referring to what you said about like the biomech reports, like when I first started working, you know, like if a guy had like a low shoulder abduction or something like that, you know, but also had you know, he sucked at scap retraction and he, you know, had a really poor block and like his torso angular velocity was like below average.
Yeah.
You know, I would try to like fix the shoulder, you know, like
you
try to fix every single thing, or like a lot of things, versus now it's like, all right, I know like these things tend to like correlate well to ball velocity. I'm gonna focus on like those three, and as long as those three get better, we probably have a really good chance of like just getting better. And maybe we address that, you know, fourth thing, fifth thing, like later down the road. But like right now, I know X, Y, and Z are gonna give you the best ROI, so I'm gonna focus on those.
Yeah. You also probably have a better feel for which ones you can reliably like improve in this amount of time.
Right.
Like you're here for this amount of time.
100%.
These are the ones that I've had success with, like actually improving with guys.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I'd say there's such a light years and difference in the way I think about things, like when I got here and now. Like it's not really even comparable. Like the classic like meathead strength coach wannabe, like so obsessed with maximum strength, absolute strength. Like I was fucking 225 pounds, like bench pressing 335, like Hatfield split squatting 600 pounds, and then like would go throw the baseball 85 miles an hour. And just be like,
I'm doing the right thing.
And then like just like I'd be like, oh, like if I
this is good.
if I pull 650 sumo, then I'll do it.
Then I'll be 95.
I was so caught up in like the modality in which I was delivering the stress in, and not in the stress itself at all. And like I view that so differently now. Like now I don't really care what the modality is. Like as long as I'm delivering the stressor, that's all I care about. And like
it's cool.
I got really good at lifting, but I didn't really get good at like applying those forces in the context of my skill. And it's like now, like if you look at my force plate numbers, like I probably couldn't deadlift like within 200 pounds of what I was deadlifting then, but like I produce way more force. So I just spent less time deadlifting. I was fucking deadlifting twice a week, and I was super obsessed with it. And then I would not be able to like transfer that to my sport. So like that, it's not even close. And like being around people like Connor White and Stephen Simmons and like people that are really, really smart when I was really, really dumb had a like really huge impact on that.
Hell yeah. Anthony mentioned in the past, but I think it's worth repeating. Like that's what being data driven's about. Like actually not just being data driven to prove what you're already doing is right, but like being data driven to actually look back and improve the things you did wrong in the past, which isn't always easy to like look back and be honest with yourself about. Or just like be aware of it.
I think one of the things too, we talked about this recently as well, but a lot of the push internally on what we've done with a lot of the tools and dashboards and stuff, I think has accelerated a lot of that in the right direction, where now, you know, we give specifically on the biomech side with the pitching guys, it's like we just give you guys the tools to kind of like understand more and more how pitching works and kind of like, you know, figure it out from there, as opposed to you know, these like models that just like bulk get put on everyone. Like, I mean, we've talked about it a million times, but the first time when Kyle Muller came in and threw 97 and just like hit every inefficient red flag was just like, oh, okay. I mean,
nothing matters.
Obviously something's wrong here, you know? So like, but yeah, getting those tools on your side. And I think like, in the off season, just like tinkering with the HP dash and seeing all those tools, like the amount of readily available actionable data that you guys have access to just be able to learn, so fast, like, okay, this program worked really well, these lifts, or I remember something else I did with that guy. I mean, the acceleration of learning that you guys have, I think is, as of late, just like really propelled us, and makes it so that, anyone can come in, right? You don't need to be the best coach ever.
Right.
As long as you just like care about the guys. Like, I'm so much less worried about internal employee turnover here, which we've always like had, just like MLB just wants to keep, taking all our friends. But like we can have interns come in and give them access to those tools, and they are going to be able to learn so much faster and become
100%.
Great coaches because of that, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, even thinking back to like when I started, right? Like just like running a biomech report, like running an athlete meeting right now, like an intern could probably do that in like, I don't know, 3 weeks and like, do it like relatively well. Same thing with the PD. Like first when I came in, and like mind you, this I started here in like 2020, so it's not that long ago, right?
Yeah.
But like, yeah, just like things like the onboard, things like the biomech viewer, the like Besky has built, and like all the tools he's like worked on, like all those things. Like you can go and look at like, okay, does this correlate to like ball velocity?
Yeah.
Yes or no? Do I need, like further, like furthermore, you can like break it down to like velo spreads or so, right? So
for
like,
sure.
does this correlate to ball velocity for you guys who like throw over 90 or whatever?
Yeah.
And same thing on the pitch side of things, right? So like when I first came in, it's like if you wanted to know what a good fastball looked like, and you had like no idea what like metrics were, right? Like I was when I first came here, right? Like other than velos, like I have no idea what lift is. Honestly, I didn't know. I can just go on the blog, right? Like the Statcast dashboard, so I can just look and like sort by Stuff Plus and like see what characteristics like some of the best fastballs in the game have. Like, oh yeah, they're like thrown hard. They also have a shit on the lift, Okay. Same thing with sliders, right? So like now somebody can, like a pitching intern can probably run a PD in like the first month and a half here, versus before you had to shadow X amount of them. You had to like, you had to run a few with like a trainer there, and then like you were like so like the process of like running a PD went from like, I don't know, 8 months to like, and I don't know if that's actually true, but like probably like 4 or whatever. So like now we have guys who like can probably run a PD in like a month and a half.
Exactly.
Right. And like that doesn't mean that like we just like give the guys like, hey, here's this onboarding course. Like here's a blob, here's a PD dashboard, or whatever. Just like go through that and like learn on your own, right? Like you can do that, but also like while you're running a PD, right? Like either Lang and myself or whoever's going to be there running it with you, making sure that like, all right, like, yeah, like that was good, but maybe instead of like trying to explain every single detail, maybe you explain why like spin efficiency matters, or like why going from like a 130 axis to like a 1 o'clock axis, if you can, it feels natural for the athlete, might be a good idea. If like all those things, it's just like so much easier to like just work here.
100%.
Yeah, and
I like be good at it too.
Yeah,
agreed. And I think like the view shouldn't be that like the floor, because the floor has gotten way higher to like coming in and working here and immediately making a difference. But just like in my view, like the ceiling of how good of a trainer you can be is that much higher as well. Like the best guys, like, I mean, I've been running meetings with Juan for 2 years. I'm sure he'll say that my meetings have gotten better the last 2 years. Like the best guys can like take all of the information that's readily at your disposal, and not only are they really hardworking and like work their asses off to understand it all, but like they do a really good job of communicating it and like those soft skills, those like dealing with athletes. Like, so it's not like anyone can come in and just be an amazing trainer. Like you still have to be like work your ass off at it, but like the floor is so much higher and so is the ceiling. Like you really
100%,
especially as someone that's like part of like the new era of Driveline or like a newer employee, like you really can't take for granted like all of the like work and like the steps that have gotten you to the place that you were at. Like Dan Adams was like ripping VBT trials 4 years ago, and now I just like get to use force plates. Like it's not the same game, so like you really can't forget that, and like you really have to work that much harder on like the soft skills and like being really, really good at working within the systems that we've created. Like the ceiling's that much higher because of that. Yeah, for me.
That's a good way to put it. I like that a lot. I got there was a point a couple years ago. I want to say it was around the time of Slugfest, honestly. I think it was probably right around when, it must have been like winter 2019, right around the time, like, you know, you were potentially coming on, because we had faced a ton of turnover. And I remember we were talking about a lot of like system operation improvements and updating onboarding and stuff. And I remember talking to Dan about this, and I think Bill as well, specifically on the biomech end, because it was still so much more like on R&D's end. Like a lot of the information from the report was filtered through us to you guys. And I just remember saying, because I had just gone through the ringer of like a year and a half basically of talking back and forth with our skill floor guys and like answering questions and giving them my thoughts on biomechanics, and then 80% of them ended up taking jobs in pro ball and they were gone, right? And in my mind, it's like, oh shit, we got to do this again, right? And I just kept talking about and trying to, express this, which I now realize now what I was trying to say. But at the time, it was just my big fear was I don't want new like trainers and stuff to say what I say in meetings. Like I don't want that, because then it's just going to become this like telephone game regurgitation that's like lost, years later. Like I don't want to, say to Bill, like, this is what I'd say, and then Bill says this and someone follows him. It's we need to build out tools and systems that can empower these people to think how I would think about this and then formulate their own. Like that is going to be, so much better in the long term, as opposed to just like, okay, I see elbow flexion like this is what I would type out. Like that if we do that, it's just gonna, we're gonna get stuck in those ways. One, we're not gonna be able to think long term about other stuff or find things. Like just empower them to think within this framework that we've created, and then, build tools and kind of iterate on them. So that was a huge thing early on. You came on at the right time for sure with a lot of those, I think.
Yeah. I mean, just like, to add to that, like even having, which I think I can't speak to, like, prior to the time that I started working here, but like same thing, like not only do you have like the onboarding on our side and you have like tools and all that stuff, but like you also still like shadow meetings from like other trainers, right? So like, if you and I might like explain scap retraction differently and elbow flexion, and I don't know, the intern like likes the way you explain scap retraction, likes the way I explain elbow flexion, or like he sort of like merges the two, and that's how he now explains elbow flexion and scap retraction. So like that's a good way for like us to still like teach guys who are coming in how to like read a biomech report and how to communicate the information, but we still give the trainer not only the tools to like learn what those things are, but like how to communicate that, which is like a super short report. Right?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
The last thing you want is like, which I definitely did when I started working here, is like everything was like on the reports like super like, like too technical. It's like versus now it's like, hey bro, like this is what this means. It's like this is elbow flexion. That's 90, greater than 90, less than 90. Brice had probably heard this thing like fucking I don't know 350 times.
We keep
it
like, we keep it pretty
but
casual.
it's like when you tell that to an athlete, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But now you just go on the floor, it's like, yo, this, and it's like, okay, elbow flexion. Okay, I know that. I know why my trainer is not asking me to like throw, like get my hand a little bit closer to my ear. So it's not only having the tools, but like you said, it's like allowing it's a combination of both, like allowing trainers to like think by themselves, so like come up with ways and like how to communicate while still expressing like good information.
It's so fun watching trainers talk to athletes like that, because there's definitely a wrong way to explain some things, but I don't believe there's any like perfect way. You know? Like 100%. The perfect way is the way that athlete understands it and is able to apply it. And just like that's going to be different for almost all athletes. Like there's going to be some heuristics that you can use or whatever, but some of the trainers here and you guys are just like, it's so impressive to be around you guys, and you like say something or use some analogy or use some explanation that it just like, holy shit, that clicks, like it clicked for me or whatever. It's really fun to watch, and I think what it's all about, really.
I think there's like a huge difference between saying something that you've heard someone else say and saying something that you actually know. And that's kind of it's especially important too, I think, with our athletes and the type of people that we interact with, because they can just smell bullshit right away.
100%.
You know? So, and I've had moments like that in athlete meetings, and I think I've seen them too previously, where it's like, you know, I heard a soundbite or a mechanical thing, and I was just like, oh yeah, you just need to do this. And then the athlete's like, why is that? And I'm like, well, I don't know, but this other guy said this at one point, so I'm pretty sure it's important, you know?
Yeah.
As opposed to if I actually knew why this thing is important, you know? Because the athletes will want to go like one level deeper.
Yeah, and like even saying that you don't know, right? Like, which is like, a lot of people don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Right? But like, I'm at the point where like, if somebody comes up to me, he's like, hey, do you think if I do X, Y, and Z, you know, like that's good? And if I don't know, I'm like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Like, but you can try it out, right? Like, use a radar gun's feedback.
Yeah.
If it works, like keep doing it. But like, I'm just not gonna sit here and like tell you like, yeah, bro, like 100, like do what Jordan Hicks does, and like, just that's the only reason he throws hard. It's like, like that's just not how it works, you know. Like that's a good thing about like being data driven. Is like you like realize that like as much as you know, you still don't know shit.
Yeah,
like that like literally like that's what I've taken. Like during my period here, it's like I know a lot more now than I did when I came in 2020, and like I'm way less confident now, and not in like the way I talk or anything like that, but like knowing that like I still don't know a lot of shit. You know, versus when before I came here, I was like, Driveline, man, they have all the answers. You know, and then like I talked to like Brady or Lindley or Caravan, like or Coin or like Clangan, and they're like, I don't know, man, like I just don't know, like you know, and I'm like, all right.
If that guy feels like he doesn't know, I definitely don't.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah.
And that's such a crazy, valuable response when dealing with an athlete. Like, just looking at an athlete and being like, yeah, I don't know, man. Like,
because like
the amount of buy-in you get from that is insane. Like,
because like if they go on IG, right? Like if they go on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, it's like this will like give you like 0.5 ticks, and like if you hinge, this will give you 5 miles an hour. It's like, and like they come in expecting those answers. Like if I do X, Y, and Z, like is that good? Am I gonna throw hard at? And you're like, they're expecting you to say yes. I like buy into all the bullshit that's like out there. And you're just like, I don't know, man. Like I don't think that like being able to tell an athlete like I don't think that matters. Like the looks you get from people when you say like I don't think that shit matters.
The famous 2 words, baby. It depends.
It depends.
Right.
It depends, and here's why.
Well, like it might matter, but like for you right now, it doesn't. Does that make sense? But it might the next training block.
That really reminds me. Lindley and I had a run-in on one of our trips with a group of people that we previously butted heads with. I'll tell you guys after the podcast who it is. But one of the things, there are a lot of things from that conversation that have always like stuck out with me and just been like burned into my memory. But by far the biggest one was when I was trying to explain how we approached stuff and how we did things and how we're very comfortable with just like that interaction, telling an athlete that we don't know, and also just approaching things from a more like probabilistic perspective in terms of like, hey, we feel really confident that with this program, like we think you're going to get better, you're going to improve your velocity, but like at no point in time here do we ever just go in and say like, you do this, you're going to gain X miles an hour. Like that is across the board. And this person like clapped back and they were like, do you think that any player is going to want to like interact and work with a coach that doesn't have like that kind of confidence, that's telling them that they don't know if they can give you results? And I was like, yes, that's honesty. Like I'm trying to create 100%. A relationship and rapport with this person. I need them to trust me, so I'm not going to bullshit them. And I just like kept dying on that hill. I mean, there were moments where I was like, the confidence thing, maybe that's a point, but I was like, no, like I would much rather prioritize that open, just like trust and honesty with the athlete, as opposed to just like selling them some bullshit. Cause I've been on the other end of it, right? Like having Tommy John twice, you do everything right. You know, first time around, 12 straight months of rehab, you know, grind my dick off nonstop. I come back, third appearance, I just pop my UCL again. And I'm like, okay, everyone around me for the last year has just been telling me that like, if I do this, if I check off these boxes, I'm going to be good. And that didn't happen. Right. So like I've gone through that and I know how painful that can be for an athlete. So I'd much rather just like, here's the truth, man. Like I think this is going to work. You buy in with me and let's see where it goes. Like, I'm not going to guarantee you any results, but let's do this thing together.
Right, 100%. And I think that something that you said like a few episodes ago, it was like, we've never been the ones to like guarantee you results, but like we can guarantee you that we're going to build the best training program. Yeah. And that's still true. Yeah. Like you're not going to hear me like, or any trainer on the floor guarantee results. But it's like, we feel confident enough that like, if you are here and we do X, Y, and Z on this side and on the HP side, like that's a good bet. Yeah. You know? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a bet.
Great.
I like that.
Yeah, I think there's a real like hunger for that, especially as like a college baseball player.
Yeah.
Like hearing someone say that they don't have all the answers and that it depends, and then there's a lot of nuance, and like that they can like kind of navigate the like alleys of that nuance, I guess. Yeah. Like that's crazy valuable.
I think it's changed a bit. The kids nowadays are too smart. They're willing to challenge authority.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe in the past, a lot of these older coaches, like, that strategy probably did work, you know, but nowadays there's too much information out there. They're too smart. They're too willing to just like, that guy's full of fucking shit, dude. You know, just like, no shot. So
I agree.
Bodie says all the time, he's like, kids are gonna start standing up to bullshit. They have Google.
100%, this guy said that. I gotta fucking squash the bug. What the fuck? Yeah. Fuck. You guys, any closing thoughts? College summer. We've gone for like an hour now. You guys, anything going into college summer training?
Personally, I'm fired up. The summer's obviously a grind for a lot of people. Yeah. But I don't think the environment like rarely ever gets better than like a heavy velo day in the summer when guys are getting good results. So
I agree with that. Same thing as like, you know, you like towards the end of April, you're like, fuck, college summer, here we go. You know, it's gonna be brutal.
You see the Monday schedule,
20th like assessments are booked, you know, like, oh, we're fucked. But like to that point, it's like today, you know, if you went out to the floor today at like noon, which is normally a dead time, right? It's like bumping, you know. Athletes came in during that, you know, 12 o'clock slot to like warm up, and they're like, "What the fuck is going on?" It's like, "Oh, nothing." It's just like 7 new guys that assessed yesterday. They're like are gonna be training here. They're also doing the strength assessment today. Like it you know, like the atmosphere is starting to build up. So like that's pretty exciting, you know, because like there's like a Saturday where you have like 8 guys doing plyo velos, and then you have another 8 guys doing mound velo, and everybody's yelling. You know, like those are pretty, like they're, you know, like long days, but like they're pretty fun.
Yeah, it's electric. Like just coming out to run like the 1 o'clock warm up, and there's like 40 guys in it. And
right.
Hyped to be there, and it's sunny, which is sick.
But
yeah, I think like, and it's just like such a rare thing. Is just like you'll turn on a college baseball game at any time and just like see a dude you trained or a dude that you trained with, or like it's almost a guarantee you're going to play against somebody that you trained with here. And like there's like a real camaraderie there, and like I formed a lot of relationships with guys in college summer that I still text. Like they text me about their training once a week, or
100%.
Like those relationships are like pretty solid. And you meet some pretty cool guys in here, because it does attract people that want to get like honesty out of their career. And like I can always say that's what I like found lacking in my baseball career, is just like I wanted to be around other people that wanted to find the answers and like wanted honesty out of their career. And I always felt like very alone in that in a lot of spaces, but just like that's why I always felt at home. Like when I first came here, I was like, oh shit, like I feel at home here, because like these people want to find the answers and like the honesty out of their career as much as I do.
Yeah. There are 2 periods I get super nostalgic about, and they're both Driveline related. And it's summer 2016, training with those guys. I mean, I talk about it all the time, just because it's like 100% is the thing that I always think about. Just back to the summer, fucking first time I met Rob and Jags and like everyone else, and like fucking met John Creel, and then the other day just see him getting his first AAA strikeout. It was like, what the hell? You know? It's just like crazy shit like that. And the other time is like really early on R&D days, like in the front office or in the front lobby of 4-3, just like fucking Caravan and I specifically, and everyone else. I mean, it was just a different time, you know, just showing up at 2 p.m. and staying here till 4 a.m. every single night. But the summer training thing, man, it's always the one that I just like, fuck, man, I just miss the shit out of it. It was just different, you know. Everyone's there for the same reason. Kind of what you said, that same thing really resonated with me, is like being on teams and in other places where it's not that they didn't have the same like absolute level of buy-in. Some of them did for sure, but they just didn't have the same type, right? Like the same hunger for like, I'm going to exhaust every resource I possibly can, you know. But it's like, if you're coming here and you're training here this summer, like you are that type of person, and everyone around you is going to be that type of person. And that bond that you create is just like, you can't even describe it, you know.
100%.
Special.
Fuck yeah.
Well,
Episode 83.
Thanks for coming on, boys. Yeah.
Thanks, Chandler.
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you for having me on.
Episode 83.
Yeah.
Hopefully Caravan's back next week. So until then, peace.
Peace.
There we go.
Later.